Welcome back, everyone. We are live for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, as always, Jack Greenstock, joined by an amazing panel. First, I'm going to pass it over to Spartan Grown.
What's up, everybody? I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. Or you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com for all your gardening questions, organic or synthetic.
Welcome back. And just a reminder to everybody to click on over to the live chat so you can see all the messages if you want to. I want to pass it next to Kyle Breeder.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Kyle Breeder. I specialize in feminized breeding, and I have a seed company if that's something you're interested in. I do have a website, which is the letter P followed by breeding.com. I do have a collaboration coming up with Dan from Gnome Automatics for a new autoflower launch, which is really interesting. And it's some terpenes that, in his words, he's never smelled on an autoflower plant. So that's gonna be really cool. And feel free to reach out to me on all social media platforms, pure_breeding on Instagram and pure breeding on anything else.
Glad to have you back, and I'm looking forward to that. I know he's smelled a lot of different autoflower genetics as he's been working with them for literally a decade plus now at this point. So cheers to him. It was great having him on a few weeks ago, and cool to hear that you guys are collaborating and putting genetics out there for the community. But next up, I'll pass it over to Matthew Gates.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I've been working with cannabis for about 11 years now. And if you want to learn more about plant health and that sort of a thing, you can check me out at my Zentanol YouTube channel, where I'm going to be uploading a pretty popular video, which you might actually get into talking about a little bit from Instagram about the sort of somoclonal research and how cuttings can change and mutate over time. And where you take cuttings on plants may have a significant impact on that. So if you're interested in stuff like that, you can check me out there. Also on my Instagram at SyncAngel.
That was a great post. I commented on that, and I think it was about an hour long. And you said that there's going to be a follow-up on a future cannabis project too. But I think we might talk about that tonight because I think it's interesting conversation as well. But next up, we've got Noah the grower.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Noah the Grower with 2 E's on Instagram. You can find me there. And most weeks here on Grow with My Fellow Growers with all you guys. In the last half hour of the show, I'll go live in my room, show you guys what I got going on. Everything that I showed last time 2 weeks ago is I'm getting ready to pull some down tomorrow, so looking pretty nice. Excited about that. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you back, Noah. I always love the garden updates, and it's cool when there's a few week difference and you can really see the changes. I know it's sometimes you can notice even from one day to the next, but for the viewers, especially 2 weeks is a big time, especially at the late point in flower. So excited to see that, and excited to introduce the American one. Not last this week because we have a special guest next.
Hello, Jack and everybody. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm the American one on the YouTube and the American one _with_18s on the IG. And yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy we have a guest. It's awesome.
I guess she's a former panelist, early member of the show, Miss Nudie Grows. Welcome back.
Hello, Jack and friends. I'm very glad to be here. Impulsive last minute guest here, Miss Nudie Grows. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Nudie Grows, on YouTube at Genevieve Eats Weed. I am a medical home grower here in Canada, and also the head grower and director of cultivation of Stewart Farms, which is an aquaponics living soil farm in New Brunswick. I just moved out here 3 months ago, so
it's been awesome. Awesome following your journey over there in the Great White North. As our former host used to say, Miss Nudie from the North Pole, his favorite grower from the North Pole.
His favorite grower from the North Pole. So let's include that.
That's a good way to introduce you as always. And I don't want to call you a guest because I do think that you're a permanent panel member of the show and always welcome back whenever you can make it. I know that you're very busy now with the position at your farm. We'll definitely want to hear more about that, obviously. But excited to have you back now that we've got your opportunity to have you here. It's super cool to. I also want to shout out the fact that you've won a few competitions since the last time you've been on the show. I think I don't know if you've been on since you've entered a few of the grow offs, but maybe you could share a little bit about those results as well.
Yeah, totally. The first competition I entered was 2 years ago, and I got actually second place in that with my Jilly Bean. And that was a Canadian Four Plants home grower competition, judged by the home growers. All of us judged each other's. And then the last 2 years, I've won a few different things at Hempfest Cup, which is one of the bigger Canadian cannabis cups, one of the first ones, which is judged on a full a numerology platform of like things I don't even understand by sommeliers here in Canada. And also I took the top 3 of 4 medals this year for Hempfest. I won't even talk about last year. I will a little bit. So I won first place in CBD last year for my Candida, and I got second place for top female grower. And so my goal coming in from last year to this year was I wanted to get number 1 in top female, and I wanted to keep my title for top CBD. So this year I entered my Charlotte's Web and I kept my title for highest CBD. I won highest THC with my Gorilla Girl. And then I won first and second place for top female grower with both strains. So
nice job.
Talk about sweeping the competition, representing
Yeah.
Miss Nudie Grows up there. We just had to, I hate to make you, I know you're not one to like blow your own smoke or whatever like that, but we got to let the people know who, if they don't remember you, Miss Nudie doesn't mess around. She's a legit grower and has earned her way where she is in the, community up there. And it's awesome to see, because I know when we first started, you were home growing and had no commercial experience from what I recall. And to see you come a very long way has been amazing for me. And I know many others that are cheering you along.
I go way back. This group was my first original. I still reach out to you guys all the time. Recently, it's probably last week for Jack. Just these guys are my mentors, and I respect and have full gratitude for every single one of you guys. And I just love hanging out. I love talking about weed. And I came from growing illegally in a 2-foot closet to working in a 500 square foot facility, a 50,000 square foot facility, a 10,000 square foot facility, just like jumping into cannabis, hot, getting all the experience. Now I'm doing aquaponics. I'm feeding fish and feeding plants and doing living soil. You guys remember me as the hydro hustler. Wow. Now I'm running up your tails here with my organics experience.
Even more hydrological, right? You've gone even more into the water.
Just hydro organics.
Hydro organics, exactly. That is what I think aquaculture is, really.
Wasn't your group involved, Stewart Farms, on the aquaponics, potent ponics seminar that was just happened recently?
Yes, we were there. My boss, the CEO of Stewart Farms, Tanner Stewart, he was speaking on behalf of our farm and the experimenting that we've been doing and the research and development that we've been doing with our tilapia and different strains that we've been trying, different sort of diets and different nutritional things. We have biologists, like I'm working with scientists. It's really unreal. And yeah, we were the noobs, I guess I would say, on the panel, compared to a lot of the like big players in aquaponics that I absolutely respect, love, and adore. It was an awesome time. I spent a little bit of time in the chat. It was good.
They're amazing. Steve and the Potent Ponics crew and everybody that he brings on, they're just really high level, amazing stuff. I know tilapia is good, at least in my experience, from trying, I think it's from Fish Head Farms. It's a product called Fish Shit. And everybody I know who uses that stuff enjoys it. They seem to get great results from it. I'm not, again, sponsored by them or anything, but it smells fucking horrible. So when you open it up, it's nasty. So like either keep it away from your nose or wear a mask or something, but it works. The plants really seem to like it. And I've only seen great results so far from it.
I think I have a couple of videos on Instagram with some of the fish stuff, but yeah, you get covered in the real fish shit, like fresh shit. So maybe it's better than the bottled stuff. But yeah, when you're agitating the water, you got to get all that good stuff off the sides, and it's getting up and on me, and it just is what it is. I'm getting fed, the plants are getting fed, everyone's getting fed. Fish are getting fed.
It's like cannabis dirty jobs version, There's going to be Spartan, mopping up, something flooded over at Mitten Canico, and then Nudie getting splashed by fish shit at her spot.
Yeah. Or sometimes they're just so aggressive to see you in the morning, and ours are way older than they should be. Like the first rule of aquaponics is do not get attached to the fish. Do not become friends with the fish. Do not name the fish. I love every single one of them. I walk in there on the weekends and it's like, good morning, my sweeties. And they splash their tails up at you. Like it's a pretty cool, it's a pretty cool job. And our actual fish guy that's there, Joe, every single day, they know him. When he walks in the room, like they know him. He's there to feed them their treats and give them their love. It's pretty cool.
Do you ever get to eat the tilapia yourself? And do you feel like there's a difference between that and other tilapia that you've had? And if so, what is that? And use adjectives, because I feel, if you can, I mean.
We haven't got to eat them yet, but we are going to have a summer barbecue this year. And I will let you know with all the adjectives how delicious they are.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because
they're a bit old though, so they might not be as delicious as I'm hoping. Because I think
maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. I think sometimes the older the fish, it might be better. Like it maybe develop more muscle, or I don't know, something. Maybe I'm just bullshitting, but I think the bigger, heavier fish often seem to be like.
It's going to depend on what they've been eating too. Tilapia are such a fascinating fish. They're so versatile. They use them for like lots of different reasons, and a lot of tilapia are farmed for food, but tilapia can also be used for like sewage treatment. They can be used for a lot of different things, aquaponics and stuff like that. You don't want to eat the ones that are used for sewage treatment, but it depends on anything what you've been feeding them. And I think Miss Nudie's probably been feeding them pretty good stuff.
Better than sewage, I'll bet.
Yeah, probably better than sewage, but that's always what I think about. Once I learned that tilapia were used for in sewage treatment facilities, it's like it's hard to kind of get past that and enjoy tilapia, I guess. But it's a very versatile fish.
Good to know. Our fish we've gotten since they were
obviously.
I've only had it wild caught
in their diet, but yeah, they're really fat. I think they get a lot of extra treats, and when we do tours, everyone wants to feed the fish, and so they get a little bit extra. And next year, after we eat them all, we're going to replace them with salmon. Salmon.
I think of I just usually think of how they're carp. So like, I mean, there are certain heuristic opinions about carp, and goldfish are carp, and they can be kind of quote unquote dirty fish, or rather fish that can live in extreme conditions.
Yeah.
So
and they'll eat
I
anything.
grew up with a little with a 55-gallon tank growing up, and I had a Placostomus and all kinds of other fish like that. So
Genevieve, what's the max weight of some of those fish, and what's the lifespan you're getting out of them?
Ooh, okay, so we've had these ones for about 3 years, so that's quite old for fish, which I've learned. And I don't know the weight on them, but I'm going to tell you a little story. So the power went out one day. And the generators weren't all working in sync. Like things happen at the farm, the days are crazy sometimes. So the power went out, and right away the fish guy, Joe, was like, shit, and we're running to the fish room. I didn't ask why or anything, but we're running to the fish room. And we have our huge tanks. I think they're 200-gallon tanks, huge round tanks, maybe 400-gallon tanks. I'm not sure. Anyways, they're covered in nets, so the fish can't pop out, right? These fish, first of all, when we got in there and the power had only gone out for 5 minutes, 2 fish were on the floor. So I had to raw dog a fish that's like this big with my bare hands and get it back into the tank through the net. I saved its life. This fish thinks I'm its mom for sure. But yeah, Joe just knows what to do, get these fish. And then we had to hold down the nets because they were slamming out of the tank because of the loss of oxygen. These things are strong. I didn't realize the strength on them. So because I lifted one up with my bare hands, I can guess that it probably weighs about 3 pounds.
Wow. Yeah, 3 years old is I know depending on where you are and what you're dealing with, but we have lake trout up here, and they can live into their 80s and 90s in lakes. I don't know.
Maybe it's I'm not even gonna pretend I'm a aquaponics master, or I'm not a master of anything, but aquaponics, I'm such a noob, so I'm just learning about the fish, about the whole everything. Fast
Farmed
paced.
fish, I think, is what they're saying, that they don't live 3 years
Yeah.
typically. So like
That's
a
probably
fish
what it
farm
is.
typically is farming it for the
City
meat
fish.
of the fish to sell it at a fish market to be eaten by humans or
Right.
animals
Yeah.
or whatever, which is perfectly legal and normal practice that happens all over the world or whatever. Some people like to get moral and whatever ethical about it, which there is that process. Like Nudie has an attachment to these fish now, so it's definitely going to seem
Just some
hard
of them.
to see him go. And that one, you definitely saved its life. So I don't know if you're like its mother or its savior, but it definitely appreciates you for getting there in time, even though it was going back into like non-oxygenated water. It probably was able to survive. So that was the
Yeah,
right thing to do.
You know, what's pretty interesting too is I watched this whole documentary on goldfish, and goldfish in a tank that only lasts a few years, maybe perhaps like a tilapia or like in farms where they're really congested, but like out in
Yeah.
the wild, that thing can apparently live for like 30, 40 years. Like if you
I
put
need
it in a
to
lake,
Google this now.
which is so it just goes
It's
to
like
show
the
like
orcas.
it really, yeah, it's really the environment that they're living in that dictates a lot of their their growth and age, which is I found interesting.
Yeah, there's quite a few. There's 200 in each tank. So, and like I said, I wish I knew how big the actual tanks are. I'll know that for next time. But they're huge tanks, big fishing.
How many?
Not fish.
I don't know if you know. I don't know if you know this information, but how many pounds of fish shit are you getting weekly or monthly, or how does that work? I guess.
No, I don't know that answer
No.
either. But every day I go into the fish coop tank and it's full.
So how about how does it affect differently from what you're doing, like with the aquaponics? How does it affect differently what you're feeding? Do you have to like how do you know what their input is?
So we get the testing done so we can see kind of like the soil analysis, but like for water, and so that we can see exactly what nutrients they're getting. And it isn't a lot of nutrients they're getting. What they're getting, and what I noticed in this last run is we did some testing with like hotter soil and toxicity, and we had kind of a low stress resistant strain. And so we did 3 different batches. So one batch was full fish water, one batch was fed 50% fish water, and one batch was just our regular water that we use, our filtered water. And the two, well, even the 50% was better than just the water, but we had a lot of ammonia issues because of the nitrogen not being broken down properly from the soil. And so there was quite a bit of burning. But the ones that had the fish poop, there's again, the scientists explained this to me, but there's like nitrifying bacteria or something that helps break down the nitrogen so that the plants can absorb it better. And that was the exact reason why these plants thrived when the other ones were suffering so badly. So it's the microbials that I think
it's the aquatic. You're adding like the
foods
aquatic
in the
microbials.
Yeah.
It's like
So
you get a whole new world with the aquatics. You get a whole new microbial world that you can support and add to your soil that you normally can't get. I mean, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And I'm just at the very beginning of learning about how it's all working like together, even with living soil, right? You guys know that I've just literally been learning about it for 2 years, crash course. But like, so we're having this like really rich, good living soil, and then adding the fish nutrient waste and seeing how it affects. And so far, I don't have any of the COAs back on this test because they just all came down. But I'll have that information soon. And just based on observation and yield, it's already showing that that's what happened. It's cool.
It's interesting to see the amount of diversity that can be successful, because we have seen something like, and it's something as small as a consortium of like 5 different microbes that can go awry if it's just like the conditions are not kept right. You know, if things get a little bit out of balance, it can turn really negative. But like the American one has mentioned in the past, and many people have also said, it's like you want to get a bunch of good guys in there to basically like make it hard for the bad guys to get a foothold. And it seems like for whatever reason, the fish biology seems to work well with the soil biology. Maybe they have some protectant in their gut that's like they've evolved to maybe protect themselves from certain parasites that maybe are beneficial with the soil or whatever it is. But even just the nutrient content, and even if it's minimal, it's nice to add a little kick to the soil. But from what you're saying with the testing, it does seem like it is mostly the microbials, which is the thing that I think we actually least understand as far as what I've been able to look at with the sciences. Like we understand the NPK stuff pretty well. But microbials is sort of bleeding edge still to this day. And like people like Brandon and others with microbe companies are coming out with certain consortiums. And I think his is just he has multiple products, but like the effective microorganism that he calls Microbe Plus is super beneficial. And I've seen it firsthand, but there's also data that shows it. So it's interesting to see. And I can't wait to see more data, especially coming out of Canada. Like you guys are going to have COAs. Eventually, there's going to be other labs and things hopefully studying this because they'll see it successful and want to understand what's making it tick and work well. And maybe Potentonics will jump on sometime tonight. I see him in the chat often. I don't know if he's been here tonight or not, but I think this would be a good episode for him to jump in on.
I have a question for you real quick. Miss Nudie, I'm just interested. Do you have to avoid, like, are there any IPM like sprays or things that normally you could use, but now that you're in an aquaponics setting, you can't use? Is there anything weird that way?
I don't fully know that. I know that just as far as our SOPs go, we don't do any foliar sprays. And just with like health rules, there are some sprays that you can use, like but nothing on plants really. So it's just all beneficials for IPM, strictly
Nudie, the plants and the fish aren't in the same room, or are they?
No, they're not.
So
Doing like dual room stuff. So
so
not
the water circulates though to the plants and to the fish, or not even?
What's that?
No,
Is it
it
like
sounds like they're watering with it. Sounds like they're
you're just watering with it, right?
Get the water, bring it in, and then so the part that's missing in the aquaponics is that the fish aren't getting fed back. So we're feeding the plants, but we're not all the way through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the whatever sprays you use when it hit the fish anyway is what I'm getting at, or affect them, right?
Or like if you wanted to use yucca.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
If you wanted to use yucca, you could add yucca after you pull the fish shit out, mix it up with your water that you're gonna give to the plants, which is separate because it's not gonna drain through into the fish tank.
Yeah, it's simply an input. Exactly. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that offers conveniences that sometimes aquaponics wouldn't be able to get away with when they're set up, when they're connected. Like
I advise
yucca as an example.
Insects alone for pest control anyway, personally.
There's a lot of regulatory advantages of having it separate too.
Green 13, Tao was talking, he used to do that as well, and he's gone back to spraying. I think once you get an outbreak that the predators alone can't take care of, you'll start looking to a natural spray that you can knock down the population with and then maybe reapply.
That is something I worry about here for when like I hear, because I'm involved with a lot of people doing things in the States. So you hear about the horror stories and the scary stuff and the russet mites and the the scary diseases, but I'm not hearing about those too much out here. So, but they're coming, I'm sure.
Yeah. If you scout well and do preventative releases, I think, because as I said a long time ago, I don't know if this is still the case, but GW Pharmaceuticals, like one of the most well-funded operations in the cannabis kind of industry. Well, I don't know actually, but they're very well-funded. They could do whatever they want, and they use only beneficial predators in their greenhouses. According to, this was in like probably 2010, 11, 12. I saw, so that might have changed, but yeah, I really am a fan and I love them. I hate spraying my plants. Sometimes the plants don't want to be sprayed, and that's what really got me to the point, like if you spray every 3 days, sometimes, well, I don't know, but to each their own. And I advise if you have the capability, the money and the wherewithal to just use beneficial bugs there.
My only caveat on that is I really love a sulfur dip when I'm bringing in genetics. So I absolutely want to spray something on my plants when I'm bringing in anything from outside, because I want to treat it as if it is infested with something. So I don't want to say absolutely no spraying. There are instances where, and then I also, myself personally, I like sulfur in early veg on all my plants, because not only does sulfur kind of help on a broad range of pests, but it also helps on a broad range of fungus. So I like to have that little preventative there, that little prophylactic at the beginning,
I'd be remiss
I would use sulfur.
Not mention that Matthew Gates would totally probably be against my my ideology. You often like, say a
A
multi-angle
faceted
attack.
approach.
Yeah, with all different modes of action. So, but
Sure,
yeah,
that's the ideal.
right.
That doesn't mean that you could be in an austere condition that disallows that, or an economic situation or resource limited situation where it's not possible. And yeah, and another thing I like to say a lot is that it's very context dependent. Those are some really important contexts. But yeah, I mean, if you can have like a multi, faceted approach where you can hit them on all these different layers, then that definitely you should go for that. But it's not wrong or anything to not use biocontrols, for example, even.
I have a question
For
on
the
the
reason
bio.
that Spartan even mentioned, like the wettable sulfur is a really strong card that a lot of people can play easily, for a lot of reasons. It works out logistically, economically, and of course it's very efficacious. But the downsides of that would be like you might affect something you don't want to, or you might hurt like a biocontrol, for example. But sometimes that's not an important consideration, or as important.
I totally agree with that. I wanted to ask about with biocontrols. Like I know season to season for a lot of growers, like summertime is different than the winter. I don't know if the labs that they are rearing these biocontrols in are perfectly, climate regulated, but I'd wonder, like I mentioned Green 13, a fellow grower, he's over in the UK, but he mentioned that, he used to be all biocontrol and for a long time it worked. Now he's gone back to the sprays. But I almost wonder if he was sourcing biocontrols from somewhere and maybe in the summertime they're great, but in the fall and winter they're not as aggressive, or they're not reproducing as much, or maybe they just don't travel as well, or something like that, where they could just not be as effective during certain times of the year. Because I tended to notice just everything that I work with that's alive tends to be a little bit different seasonally.
Actually, that used to be a big problem with some of these biocontrols, like Persimmilus, and Cucumis, even I think Californicus. In the beginning, they didn't necessarily. I think they had forms that would diapause, so they'd go into like this sort of like hibernation-esque behavior. And of course, you don't want that. You want your biocontrol to be efficacious no matter what seasonal situation it is. And even better if like the prey also has diapause, but the predator doesn't, right? So I think a lot of places this is not actually the case. And so they've cultured them to actually not have the diapausing or have it be very reduced. But I actually also, I'm not a biocontrol supremacist. There are definitely other ways that you can go about cultivating in a way that's sustainable, ecologically friendly, and that sort of a thing. And there could be a lot of reasons, like you say. It could be the product, maybe there's something wrong with it, or the money didn't make sense, or because a lot of times biocontrols are very expensive, and that's a big limiter that is uncomfortable to talk about if you produce biocontrols, right? But certainly I hear it a lot as a consultant.
Working with cannabis, they're lucky though, because good cannabis is also still, for the most part, very expensive, many would say. In most markets, even the legal ones, even in the illicit markets, the best stuff, which I believe if you're able to grow it a certain way and can market well, can fetch a top dollar. So many times it can justify it, but like you're talking about, the costs sometimes are so different. Because like one that we were just talking about, let's say we're talking about a pest issue in veg, and I have the choice of sulfur, which is like under $10, which I could apply to the whole room several times, hundreds of times, for under $10, or a biocontrol, which might cost me $100 to cover the room once, and it might not take it out the first time. I might have to reapply or apply heavier than is needed just to be safe. So that's just like a simple 10 times costs. And there are occasions where it's that much or more, because then you talk about shipping, it needs to be overnight shipped, it might only be available from here or there or whatever. And this isn't to like dissuade people from using biocontrols. I think they're also a great option if you can afford them and get them to work for you. I've loved my experiences with them. I've actually only had positive ones, but I have heard from the community people have not the greatest experiences. So I do like to caution people of some of the potential drawbacks that there might be. But with that said,
of course, because sprays, I don't mean to interrupt, but because we are talking about sprays, I think it goes without saying to say that I'm not advocating for like myclobutanil or like imidacloprid or any of these azole fungicides that are systemic. I'm talking about things that are actually acceptable to use, like botanical derived compounds and softer chemistries and biorational things too, like they'll stimulate the immune system.
It's interesting. I think we're all in a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Spartan.
I just wanted to jump in, and I just wanted to add to that. I use beneficials as well, so I'm not saying that that's not something that I do, but I like to use sulfur at the beginning of their life, and then when they go into flower, that's when I add my beneficials. But one thing to help with beneficials, like what you're saying, the problem with, a lot of these are live, and that means you need quick shipping, like next day air, and it gets expensive. What I've done, and if I've gotten to a group of my friends that are other growers that I know, and we have an insectary pretty local to us, so we just order and we go in and put our order in all at the same time, all as one order. We just go together, so there's only one shipping fee instead of now you're splitting that shipping fee up along 4 people instead of one person, and it becomes way more affordable. And then it becomes actually an option for a lot more people. Even if you have one buddy, just splitting that cost in half is really helpful.
Yeah, I really like that perspective, and having like an overflow as well. I knew people who also do something like what you're talking about, Spartan, or even like interdepartmentally. They'd always be buying like a bulk release of a certain predatory mite. And if it didn't work out, if they didn't need to apply it because the pest wasn't there, they might apply it minimally and then give it to another department who's growing a different kind of plant, or like you're saying, which I think is even better, to other people. Or I also have encountered people who, and I think, don't you do this also, Spartan? You buy them for the people who grow. Or was that somebody else?
There's a lot of, actually, I've been hearing more and more facilities who, commercial facilities will buy extra and send home extra on purpose with their growers.
Exactly.
Because they know they have home grows and they want to make
sure that's not you,
grows.
Right?
No, everybody, my buddies that grow that I just described earlier, those are the guys.
Oh,
they all work there.
Okay.
They all work there.
So
yeah, we kind of do that on our own, but yeah.
Yes. No, I think that's brilliant and forward thinking and prudent, and a great example of like just caring for your own growers. It's good soft power. Let's put it that way.
It's a community aspect of cannabis that I think we all love. It's people splitting a seed pack cost, or splitting the cost of their predator mites. However you can build friends in this community, share the costs so that you all get a better deal. Oftentimes you don't need the massive amount that might only be available, and so if there's 4 people or 3 people or even just 2, it can be a lot more logical for you. And connect with the people in the chat. If you're comfortable saying it, people in the chat, say where you're from and try and link up. If you don't already know, like the Michigan Bros Grow Show is a great example of a local community where, all, for the most part, all those people are from Michigan and they are pretty, open about where roughly they're at, and you can link up with these people. And I think that more people need to do that. And if we can facilitate that with our chat, that's a great thing to do, because a lot of people feel like they're on an island or alone, and oftentimes there's somebody growing literally on your street or down the road or wherever it is, depending on where you're at. So you might be around more green friendly people than you even know. And it's honestly so nice to connect with them, because a lot of society likes to chastise cannabis users and growers and things like that. So to find people that have common interests is a great thing. And there's many of them listening and chilling here with us tonight. And I'm very thankful for all of them, coming off of, I think Thanksgiving was just this past week. So happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody. I'm thankful for Miss Nudie Grows being back here again. This is a great Sunday, as always. Looking forward to seeing Noah's grow later this evening. It's going to be a good one.
Good show I came on then for. Get to see another grower grow.
It's awesome to see other people grow, man. I have a lot of fun, and had a lot of fun listening to all you guys today.
I do know, I think Kyle has to leave at the 1 hour mark. I'm not sure if anybody else has to jump out at that time, but I want to give maybe Kyle a chance to jump in and just share some thoughts if you have any.
I'm kind of depressed that I can't see the grow room, but or maybe I can always go back in the YouTube and check it out. Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy, man. I had a good Thanksgiving. I did some deep fried turkeys. That was kind of cool. I haven't done that before. So I own a deep fryer now, which is that was interesting. If anybody's ever done it, it's a fantastic way of going about it versus oven bake. But on the cannabis side of things, yeah, I mean, I have something new going on with Dan. So I got, and I can't really recall where I got it from, which is kind of screwing me and him. But it was an autoflower variety that I called Syndica. It's basically had pure sativa traits that was like stuck in an indica body. So I just came up with the word Syndica. And it was like literally like this, just like this creamy, sweet, like blueberry, like cotton candy, just but like way more on like the sugary side, which is really interesting. And I was kind of playing with it for a while, and I stress tested it, never had any issues. And so I think I found a beautiful, an autoflower breeding is a whole different scenario, but so I found something. I sprayed one branch of each, and I found one that I thought was beautiful. I took that pollen and went on to another one, and I went through a couple of generations with it, and I basically had a whole bunch of sisters that were all pregnant. And I remember labeling like the bags, like huge yields, but no THC, or a lot of THC, but kind of airy. And I had all these bags. I ended up finding, so when I asked Dan if you want to do a collaboration, I forget which, I think it was like, no perp, high THC, good yield I put on the bag. This is like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And I sent him the seeds, and he is in love with them. He's more excited. He said he's more excited about that project than any other one that he has going on right now with some of the other guys he's working with. And it's terps that he's never smelled before. It's just like this real sugary. I'm sure he would explain a lot better, but yeah. So I'm just pretty excited about that, and we're gonna be launching that in probably the next few weeks or so. So anybody who grows autoflowers, I would definitely. So we had to discuss if we're gonna like split the seeds, and like he do his thing, I do my thing. But I think what we agreed on was just him having full control of all the seeds, and then just we'll figure out the financial side of things, which kind of I think is a better scenario, because I have a lot of respect for him. So standing by him and his brand while they're going everywhere means a lot to me. So it's and it helps just with my autoflower side of things. So that's kind of where that is.
That is one really cool dude, man. I consider everybody here on the panel to be my friend, and but I would say he's definitely, out of all the guys I've met here, me and him are really close. He's always I've talked shop with him lots of times. I ask him a lot of questions. That's a very, very smart dude, and really good guy too. So yeah, Dan is an awesome guy, man, for sure.
Yeah,
he sent me some Australian bastard cannabis seeds that I'm gonna be doing what I call the velvet bastard, because at F2 there's a really zigzaggy pheno of the velvet punch that the American one got. I called it the sawtooth pheno, and American bastard cannabis kind of has like a jagged edge leaf. So I'm gonna hunt for zigzag pheno velvet punch F2, and then cross that to the velvet punch, and then essentially cross that to the bastard. And then I'm going to gift those seeds to people and not tell them at first until they pop them. Because I just imagine when they're growing them, because I saw a few people growing ABC for the first time, and they're just like blown away when they first start seeing those crazy ass leaves. So I think it'll be like a fun gift. It's like a freebie on the side of like other things, that you give to people.
Jack, that'd be
get some
wild
crazy reactions.
If they get it serrated, it would look like a maple tree, a maple leaf, right?
I just can't even imagine. Like, I think it's going to end up like something like Freak Show, or I don't know. Like,
right.
I just can't wait to see what comes from it. I think that these mutations are interesting, just from a visual perspective. I love different cannabis genetics and proving to people that there is diversity, because a lot of people from outside cannabis are like, oh, it's all just fucking same. It's just a bunch of stoners over there doing this or that. But being able to do like 50 strains of green and show off 50 different strains and highlight the smells and different appearances and breeders and their histories and all that stuff, it's cool to me. And to be able to play around with it and have access to some of those genetics that I've read about for so long and finally get to play with, it's really cool to experiment and mess around with it.
Do we know what those are kind of testing out at? Has anybody tried testing that variety that you're talking about, and maybe where we're at with that?
The ABC, so it's typically pretty low, but there's a guy named Subterfuge who's bred it, and I don't know if I can't remember who Dan got the ABC from, but the subterfuge guy has bred up the THC pretty high. So, and I think it's available through CSI Humboldt if people are looking for those seeds. But yeah, there's a few different varieties. They've got like batch 4, batch 2, and things like that, all labeled out different, phenotypes and smells and potencies. But I do think that ABC is a little bit on the low potency side, but I think more just like from the freak perspective of it, if people, I think we'll be growing cannabis ultimately like how people grow Monstera or whatever it is, that variegated like houseplant that people like to obsess about and just keep as like, look at this beautiful collectible plant, and I think there's going to be more of that in cannabis in the future as it continues to be more and more legal, because I think it's one of the most beautiful plants out there. Like I've looked at lots of flowers and there are a lot of beautiful flowers, but cannabis is very unique in all of its presentations.
It is. I think you have to be, sorry, go ahead, Spartan.
I was just saying, imagine it could be an ornamental. If you got a really interesting leaf structure, you could keep it in an 18-hour veg cycle perpetually, just keep clipping it down.
Yeah.
And it could be a fucking ornamental plant. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The ornamental growers that we were speaking first. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just thinking that it has is a very fragrant plant. And, we associate it with a number of smells that we like for sort of the cannabis product that we enjoy in various forms. If you were growing it for a houseplant, though, I think you would want to breed it for a different smell profile. But I think that's possible. And I think it could still be a very pungent houseplant. And I think that might be something you could play with there.
Even the current cannabis from non-smokers, I was surprised when Medicropper went on fucking talking shit with Eagle. He doesn't even smoke cannabis. This dude's been growing commercially for years, and he just picks them based off, oh, that one looks the nicest, that one smells the nicest, this one's popular or whatever. So he's been growing commercially and like picking pretty fire shit that I hadn't known up until the point that he came on fucking talking shit with Eagle, and I've been following the dude for years that he didn't smoke. So it's just kind of amazing to me that he just treats them all like kind of like a houseplant, right? He smells them and looks at them, but he never consumes them ever. So
yeah, the ornamental growers that I worked with previously, a couple of years ago, they were trying to do the same thing. And not only were they trying to switch crops, but also still with the ornamental side, they were trying to include hemp as like a ornamental admixture. And I thought that was really forward thinking and interesting. Because I think he was trying to target like a younger demographic that might find that very, very much more appealing, because apparently younger people aren't buying flowers, which doesn't sort of surprise me, but yeah.
Houseplants, they come back.
Does anybody know if, one thing, I don't even know if it's biologically possible, so excuse me for bringing it up, but like if someone could ever create a plant, or maybe those plants, if anybody's even checked them, but that wouldn't produce heat, because obviously cannabis plants produce heat, and where authorities are able to see that. I wonder if like the ABC and the Australian and all the other stuff does as well.
The authorities, when they look for heat signatures, they're looking for HPS bulbs. They're not looking for the heat that the plants themselves put out. They're looking for the
I could have sworn that. I thought I did some research where tomato plants and marijuana plants do produce heat, and that's why they do kind of hover over in the cooler nights, kind of like the same technique.
They produce a tiny amount of heat, but those things where you're flying over with a helicopter with an infrared sensor is looking for the heat register from indoor lighting.
Or people camping out at Gorilla Grows, like in a tent in the woods next to a crop, in the middle of a national park. Like,
but could you perhaps be thinking of IR reflectance?
Yeah, because I was going to say that they do give off a different lighting,
like wavelength,
judge health. From I don't know.
I remember just watching a whole show where they're able to go into these places not in the city, that they're able to find these massive grows, like out in like Mexico and stuff like that. And
it's probably using the spectrum.
It's not the plant itself; it's from the light. It's the heat of the light, the grow lights themselves.
Yeah, but that's not heat. Exactly. You can look for basically just different patterns in the density of the foliage and of what specific foliage puts off those sort of wavelengths. So, but you're not looking at heat registers in that case. And they certainly do fly helicopters over. They did more flying helicopters looking for clandestine indoor grows, but those were looking for lights.
Yeah, but it's actually a really interesting point to bring up, because we also use more and more. I'm seeing unmanned aerial vehicles being used for looking at damage and nutritional discrepancies and hydration discrepancies in plants using these spectra. And I think it's very intriguing, very interesting. And from an IPM perspective, I think that's really cool. I'm not sure exactly why, and perhaps it's just a cost reason why it's not used why it couldn't be used in other crops, because I know that you're usually doing this at a great distance, and maybe that's necessary for the reflectance. Maybe you get too much interference closer down, I don't know. But I feel like you could install you could mount an optic or a camera, or even use like a micro aerial vehicle. But I'm curious, like that's an interesting thing I'd like to see. Maybe there's more to that, possibly. Maybe you could even put like a visor on your head, and we can we can look at it like it's Ghost in the Shell or something.
Well, they're using that for raiding homes now. For like when a SWAT team does a raid, they have those UAVs that they're actually you can see live what's on the camera, and the pilot is like,
oh yeah, I've seen those. You can
so
also
they fly
like
into
look
the
behind
home
corners
to identify like where there's potential threats in the home before. They'll find like one open window, fly that in right as they bust the door down, and they'll be like, hey, there's 2 people in this room, 1 person in that room, this person's armed, this person's not. And it's actually lowering casualties, which is a great implementation of technology, in my opinion. So it's cool to see that kind of stuff in law enforcement or in agriculture. Like I know one thing about cameras that I just learned recently from a Tesla presentation about like when it's raining, the cars that are using autopilot, when it's using regular vision and colors, the rain obstructs the view, but when they go to like infrared, it can still pick up a lot of the images. So it's doing something as a computer that our human eye wouldn't be able to do, and improving upon it using that technology. And I think we're going to continue to see stuff like that in gardening, where it uses the spectrum that we can't physically see with our own eye.
I mean, for that matter, various satellites utilize radar in order to look right through clouds, look right through other obstructions. And if you angle it right, you can even, I forget what the term of this is called, synthetic something or other, but basically you're able to angle the camera, shoot the radar waves, and actually bounce it into like a structure, and then it bounces around the structure and comes back out, and then you can get like an idea of what the interior looks like, which is pretty amazing, but also has implications.
I found the reference I was thinking of, and I remember now. It somehow the photographs with the coloring showed the photosynthetic, like how much photosynthetic was happening, taking place. You know what I'm saying? So I'll drop it in. It wasn't the hemp fields. This woman was doing experiments with I forget now the exacts, and she didn't have it in the description of she was doing experiments, and she could see the difference from one field to the other field just by the color of the photograph that they took. I don't know what kind of wavelength she was using, but I'll put it in both tabs.
I've done
NDVI.
some analysis on GIS using Landsat images for that exact thing in research in southern Mexico, looking at how land use patterns had changed through time, and looking at, God, I can't remember all the details of this, but we could absolutely run filters on the Landsat images to determine sort of the photosynthesis and the amount of photosynthesis in different quadrants in the map, and then plot sort of we could see differences between forest cover and fields and other kinds of denuded landscapes, fields that had been abandoned and weren't used and stuff like that. And yeah, I ran a long sort of longitudinal study through 30 years of those Landsat images to see how the land use had changed. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just NDVI is I just put in the comments is a normalized difference vegetation index, and they use things like that. So they compare near infrared and red light because one's strongly reflected and one's absorbed. And so when you tell that difference, you can make some sort of conclusions based
Yeah.
on that. And it was
I
cool
also,
because I knew somebody who was using this to even look at different kinds of pests, like they had different and even pathogens. And I think I told a story about this being used to for a olive quick decline syndrome. This pathogen is invisible when it first infects, and then it ramps up and becomes very problematic. And they were able to tell what were visually identical populations, which ones had it before the infections actually started, which was crazy to me. And I look forward to seeing more of that lately.
I also remember watching a thing, I think it was in Brazil, where somehow they were taking satellite photographs, and because of the pyramids that they built there were made of a lot of limestone, the vegetation looked different, and they found like many sites of pyramids that were built that they didn't know about because it was covered by vegetation.
Yes, and the vegetation then is different because it was growing in a more limestone rich
Yes,
substrate than the surrounding vegetation was. Yeah, that's in further north. That's in like Guatemala and in Tabasco and southern Mexico and El Salvador, the Mayan sites.
That's fascinating, by the way. I just think that's so cool that they were able to discover that because of that reason, and end up, I think they excavated some of those sites since.
Yeah, some archaeologists think that they've discovered less than half of the Mayan cities so far. I mean, it's just such a dense jungle in the sort of seat of where that a lot of the Mayan activity were going on. So yeah, that's another way that they're using a lot of these remote sensing technologies and trying to figure out how to, interpret the different wavelengths of light. It's really fascinating stuff. But I think it kind of, a lot of that goes away when you can get your boots on the ground and sort of look around at things. So it's just different levels of scale. I don't know very much stuff that can be done better, although maybe what Matthew was just talking about is an example of this that can be done better from a remote sensing capability. The more I say this, the more I'm sort of correcting myself. There are different things you can do at remote sensing than with right up close. Most of us are dealing with our cannabis crops pretty much right up close.
Yeah, but what if I could have like a bug vision or like, like a visor where I could just I don't know, it's like FLIR, but more specific. That would be interesting.
Looking closer at a specific plant as opposed to sort of thinking about it, you're using this more like on one tree as opposed to the forest itself. I got you.
Yeah, that would be fun if I could just like pop it on and if somebody's looking in, and because it's very hard to find these small insects, right? So something like that could be really interesting, but probably super expensive right now, and maybe there's not maybe the benefits of that don't outweigh the cost.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, our ability to sense things in different ways is expanding, and improving with technology. So to think about what would be the best way to identify and to sort of sense the plant pathogens or the pests or whatever else, whether that's through maybe it's through sound, maybe it's through some other thing that they produce that will get better at being able to determine or to discern.
Imagine in the future we'll have some sort of augmented reality type thing where you could snap down. I imagine Matthew with like a little headset he could snap down. One's got like a FLIR, one's got like a UV, infrared, whatever it is, and he can just click through between them. But I know like Google Glass had something like where you could like look through and kind of like semi-augmented reality, and Snapchat's tried some stuff with like the glasses with the cameras on them and things like that. So I think that there will be a wearable technology in the future that we'll be able to implement, but I do think it's a little bit of a ways out and it'll be expensive for the first several years. I've heard that there's like for people who do coding, like writing code on computers, they have like a little camera that can monitor your screen and like help offer additional inputs and things like that. So I can imagine that being sort of engineered into alternative workplaces and jobs where it can optimize what you're seeing in front of you and offer suggestions and feedback, like, oh, hey, there might actually be pest damage there that you're not seeing yet. So something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like augmented reality glasses. I think that's there's a lot you can do with that. It certainly is. Did you actually, speaking of cool technologies, weren't you showing me a video where they were using sonication, ultrasonic?
I sent a study or a link or something like that, and I was like, hey, this is interesting, but I figured you would know a lot more about it than I would. So I was like, hey, if you want to talk about this on the show, we could bring it up, because it was not quite a white paper, but new interesting technology that I think the people would be interested to hear about. I think it was like using certain waves to, I think it was prevent pests or identify pests or something like that. I need to go
No,
back.
they were killing a virus. It was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was tomato.
Yeah, one of the
tomato brown something or other, Rugose brown virus or something like that virus. I can probably look it up, but basically, they were looking at ways that they could destroy it because it can move through water. So water tends to be a really common vector, and so they were wondering if there was a way that they could like treat the water through like ultrasonic pulses. And what they found was that when they experimented in a situation where you would never have so much virus material in the water, the pulses were very, very effective. So ostensibly, they would also be effective, potentially as a part of a water reclamation system in agriculture or something like this. And this is actually one of the, I have made criticisms of other sonication devices and mostly just claims of efficacy, like where is the data? Not that there necessarily aren't ways that they can be very useful. This is one of the ways that I think it would be very easy to use, and it would be targeted, and you would probably limit potential or unintentional consequences, right? Because once you start blasting things with sound waves, we found in experiments with like people and other sorts of situations where that could be very damaging without realizing it. And so we have to be very careful when we use such broad spectrum treatments, in my opinion. Yeah, that looks like it to me. Did I get it right? Did I remember correctly?
I believe so. So I just wanted to pull it up for the people. This is a Hort Daily article that I saw. I believe it was on Twitter, but it says various tests. They were using ultrasonic transmitters on tomato brown rugose fruit virus, and I believe it was effective from the findings.
Super effective. Oh yeah, see, that paragraph up there. A grower would never have these levels of tomato brown rugose fruit virus in their cultivation water. We'd use 12 kilograms of contaminated tomatoes, leaves, and stems. We then kept adding that to 100 liters of water. And and this was a United States Air Force, right? Is that correct? Ultrasonic transmitter.
Yeah, USAF. So I believe that's US Air Force.
Yeah. And it probably would work for other viruses too, and possibly other microbial agents as well. So that's just a really, in a lot of ways, it's actually kind of obvious, because we use that. I know people, they use this for kidney stones, for example. It's sort of an odd example, but they can destroy the sort of oxalate crystals that can form for some people, through ultrasonic pulses.
It's technically frequencies. So to all the hippies that are saying it's all frequencies, man, it's like, yeah, they're kind of right in this one at least.
Well, yeah, it's all waves, I suppose, right?
In one sense or another. But yeah, it's very interesting to see. And I would wonder, now we have to see does this work against hop latent viroid or something else like that? Let's do some testing.
And I think I imagine that it's probably not a good idea to do, and this is why I bring up like the technicality, like you say, it's very attractive to just say, oh, it's the frequency that destroys it, and that has a lot of meaning to different people. It means very different things to those people. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you have to be careful, because just because it's frequencies, man, doesn't mean that it's like benign. It can be very lethal. And I imagine you don't want to apply this sonicator to like the tissues to destroy the virus, because you'll probably destroy other really important, delicate structures and compounds and things like this. So that's all I want to say, is that I'm not like against frequencies being the answer. You just got to respect the frequencies.
100%. Like UVC, for example, it kills viruses, but it also kills cells. So we can't just go bathing in it to protect ourselves from viruses, because we'll end up causing ourselves a lot more damage than we'd be doing any good. So it's all about using it properly, right?
I kind of feel the same way about oxidation stress. Like too much is always bad, but we've evolved to use it for so many different things and for signaling and stuff, and in plants too. So if you get a product that's like, eliminate all the oxidative stress or all of the oxidation in your body, I'm like, that could be very damaging and problematic. And I'm dubious about that. Yeah.
With that said, I want to give Kyle a chance to give his final thoughts and shout out, because he is only going to be with us for the first hour tonight.
Yeah, I think we discussed some good stuff tonight. Genevieve, I'm really happy for you, and you've grown extremely far and fast in a very short little period of time. And I know that only comes with a lot of persistence, a lot of hard work, and just grinding. And so I understand how you're doing, and I'm just really happy for you. And I'm sure you're gonna keep moving on up on things.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, in regards to everyone else, man, I love you guys. Glad we still do this. I do have a new website that I have launching out. I don't know if I actually haven't mentioned that at all. It's brand new. Nothing too crazy. I had a web developer kind of just do a brand new one because the other one imploded on the last drop, and that was an issue. And it's just kind of outdated a little bit because I built it myself. So that's happening in the next couple of weeks. The drop with Dan's happening. I have a really cool project going on right now with Matt and some two other really fine gentlemen that Matt could definitely elaborate a lot more intelligently and intellectually than I can about the whole thing. That's really cool. Maybe he wants to touch on that after. And other than that, yeah, I still have some seed lines on my website if people are interested. pbreeding.com. I'm kind of running a little bit low, but yeah, that's still the original. I haven't swapped over the what she basically sent me what she built, and if I like it, she'll implement it on there. But that's still the original one. But yeah, just still happy to keep doing this. If anybody has any questions on this listening, and they're feel free to reach out. Pure_breeding on Instagram, Pure Breeding on Facebook. And yeah, I appreciate all you guys, and take care, everyone.
Have a great week, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to show
Peace
off some
out,
of the
Kyle.
website, show the original before the new one drops, so people can see
I like that.
before and after.
That was very clever. That was very smart of you, Jack. Now we have that for posterity. I like it.
Thanks, guys.
I'm happy to elaborate a bit about that with regards to SIGO International and Mark and John.
Yeah, you should.
So yeah. Did you want to say something more?
I think he just head out. I think he was just saying he respects that you are going to give it some more attention on the show, but he's got to go.
Sure. So SIGO, right? So SIGO International, they're up in Anza, and they've grown hemp, and I've worked with them with regards to their IPM. Kind of at the beginning of 2020, we had sort of plans to renovate the native plants in the area. They want to grow sort of sustainably and with the ecosystem that they have on their property. So I helped them track some of the plants that would be appropriate for these cultivation excursions, also the pests that they would be interacting with potentially, and other sorts of organisms that are sort of more neutral. And fortunately for them, they actually didn't interact with a whole lot of pests, even though our trapping and other sorts of procedures did show some things like the dreaded budworm moth and things like this, but they really didn't deal with any of that at all, which was great. So fast forward to now, they want to sort of work with Kyle and sort of grow some plants in a living soil system, and just sort of do an experiment. And to be honest, I actually don't know all of the details off the top of my head. But we did do a live stream that you can catch on my YouTube channel. I'm sorry, on my Instagram account only currently, which is Sync Angel. And we go over some of the details as well. I think Aaron the grower is also joining us here. We're going to be growing various plants that Kyle has bred, and then see the difference in cultivation for these. I think there's two different main ways that they're going to be growing it. they're going to be changing up the soil dynamics a little bit. But I'm there to help with the microbial inoculant, understanding the sort of life forms they might interact with, and also guarding against the ones that would kind of sort of spoil the results, so to speak. But we'll see what happens. And it's kind of like going to be, it's meant to be sort of a transparent look at the cultivation procedure as well. And it'll probably be a catalyst for a lot of topics that we want to talk about. Like if we do end up getting pests, we'll make a video about that. We'll talk about what happens and how we're going to mitigate that. Or if we see certain things growing, or if we see certain discrepancies, we might make a topic of that too. So it's basically like a plant vlog with a 24-hour camera. So you can see what happens at any time.
Is there going to be some kind of a control, like, because each person grows in a different way in a different system, so they'd have to have like grow in their own way, and then one with the variable, right?
Totally. It's sort of a low tech comparison. It doesn't include a control as far as I know. Just two different plots. And I think that they decided on doing 6 plants in each one. And so it's sort of like a miniature experiment there. But you do not make a poor point.
Sorry for the silence. I got a work message unrelated to the show that got me distracted, but I'm definitely really excited to see you work with Kyle's stuff and work with Saigo and do some what I consider to be like proper citizen science as much as we can. And it's cool to get that data for him on those particular strains and see how they do. And I'm excited to see the data that comes forward. I'm just happy to see cannabis being researched out in the open as much as it is in different ways. Because for so long it was kind of only a few people could do it, and it wasn't necessarily for the best reasons. It was like, let's find the bad in this and expose it and make it look as bad as we possibly can. And now we're doing like, actual research on like how it can be cultivated and pests that come about and how to treat them and things like that, versus why is this bad for children or something like that. It's a whole different world in 2021 than a few decades ago. And I'm very thankful to continue to see Canada, the US, and many other places opening up their minds about cannabis and allowing it to be researched. So
I think they were forced to, Jack, because now that they're going recreational, they can allow it. They're only doing it for the money, is my opinion. And they're shutting down some medical in a lot of states, and that's going to hamper the research on the medicinal side, in my opinion.
See, I disagree with that, because although I think that there's going to be less of a medical market, there's always going to be research done, because if it's profitable, it's like follow the money, right? And there's people an illness, treating that illness has always been fairly profitable for people, especially if they're doing it ethically and with a plant, if they can do it at scale at a good price and it's efficacious and shown to work for people, then look at how popular cannabis is right now. It's booming. So
according to the federal government, there is no medical value to it at all.
While they simultaneously hold a patent that has neuroprotective properties.
I'm on Cal's side of this. I think that if all of a sudden, and this is just a hypothetical, if you all of a sudden came out with a medical reason for alcohol, that's not going to change. I mean, this is hypothetical, but it's not going to change the fact that everybody uses alcohol. Most people use it to get a head change. I would contend that most people that are going to be growing pot at a commercial level are going to be tuned to that audience. And even if there is a small medical side, I still think that the recreational side is going to be the focus of any big time cannabis producer.
And you know what, Jack, they have studies that prove it's, reduces tumors, and the government still hasn't moved on any of that stuff. In other countries, that's a big thing. Like Israel, I think in Israel, they give it to the vets for free, if I'm not mistaken. So,
and look at what Epidiolex goes for here. Just CBD oil. Like Epidiolex is the pharmaceutical name that the FDA has approved it under. Do you know what that costs? It's like thousands a month. It's the same exact cost as whatever you would have to treat yourself of epilepsy with. They just looked at that pharmaceutical cost, went like $1 underneath it, and said, we're going to provide it the exact same cost, but $1 less or whatever it is. So it wasn't like they did it at, the greatness of their hearts. I'll say that they got it FDA approved. That's not cheap to do. So they're making their money back now. CBD oil is available by home growers and cultivators all over the world. And you can get it from hemp. You can get it from cannabis, whatever you want to call it. But I do think for the greater good, it is nice to see that starting to break down the limitations that the government has to restrict it. But it's going to be interesting to see with legalization here, because like Canada went fully legal. They're still doing medical stuff up there, right? ACMPR is still legal, which allows you way more plants than if you were just home growing, which is like 4 plants versus like people can get hundreds of plants with the medical. So I don't think we should discount the medical side of things, even if it's small and just for us to take advantage of and have larger plant counts and freedoms. And mainly for me, like I'll keep getting my medical every year just to have some of the legal protections that it provides to me as a patient, as far as like weight I can carry, a number of plants that I can have, and not worry that I popped too many seeds or something. And now I'm going to, get some big fine or whatever it is.
No, I don't think Tao was saying that. I'm not saying that. I think you should definitely be protective of patients' rights, and for those reasons, because the more that it's going to go towards it, it's going to go more towards the recreational side. Sure, if it came federally legal, there would be some research done on the medical side, and there'd probably be some aspects, and who knows? There probably is, just like you said, there probably is a whole bunch of stuff. Just I knew about the Israel study. I read about that too. But I think that it's a very slippery slope when you talking about taking away patients' rights, and all people that are medical patients should be very protective of their rights and very pro medical rights.
I think anybody who's watched this show knows my opinion about this matter. But
fuck the MCMA and RSO cures cancer.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't want it to be a pessimistic viewpoint on regulation, because, for example, there's regulation here in Michigan that earmarks money that's collected from the regulatory fees that are paid every year by our licenses. So all of the licenses, we have to pay that license fee every year. We also have to pay at the local level and then at the state level. Some of that money is earmarked directly for cannabis research, for medicinal cannabis research. And it gets split up, and it's all public record, and it gets split up to the different universities that have programs in that area. And you can look on their report and see where that goes. So it's directly funding research in cannabis. So, I mean, for sure, it can still be, if you do it right. If it's not, I mean, if that's Michigan, doesn't mean that's everywhere, but you can 100% lobby your lawmaker and tell them, hey, look, Michigan's got a program that does this. Why aren't we doing this here?
We've got ours lobbying for law enforcement. they're saying, hey, that budget that you're getting taxes now we can enforce it to go after the illegal grows and after the people that are selling it to the kids and after the people that are doing this and that, which I will agree with the fact that I don't think it should be sold to children in the schools and things like that. Even though I was using it at that age, I think that if they're going to regulate it, there has to be some level or age that you have to say when. Personally, I don't know what that age is, but I think that's up for the community to decide as a whole. We should vote on it. There should be, I think, 18 currently or 21 in most states. So if they need to enforce that, if there's people under those ages, like they aren't allowed to technically watch these shows, and sometimes people just click around it. And, people find their way around the law, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be one written, I guess.
Yeah, all systems can be abused, right? But like, as long as you're at least trying to do something that's like empirically based. Like, another thing is that, and you make a good point, like, you don't feel like arbitrarily it should be controlled. Well, it's because there are situations where maybe it shouldn't be utilized, right? Like any sort of medicinal product. I think that actually one of my favorite overlooked things about, I think, cannabis legalization, and I'm curious still to see the fallout. I'm not sure we've seen it yet, is how much the acceptance of cannabis use has maybe facilitated the question of, well, what substances are we really going to control and what is ridiculous to control? Like, for example, we will demonize if somebody was driving under the influence of alcohol or driving under the influence of cannabis or whatever, right? Because they have a sin tax, right? But if somebody's on Robitussin or some other sort of like prescription medication, people look at it differently. So a lot of that's just perception. But in all those cases, people could potentially have a shift of perception. For example,
You can still get a DUI. I'll just say that
Absolutely, right?
Tiger Woods was pulled
Yeah.
over on the side of the road. They thought he was drunk, and he was on prescription medication. Painkillers, I know from experience. I got my wisdom teeth pulled.
Was this when his wife left him? Because he didn't get a ticket.
No, this is I mean, it was definitely after his wife had left him, but this was like within the last few years, and he was pulled over on the side of the road asleep, and they thought he was drunk, and he had taken painkillers because his back's all fucked up from golf, and I think this was before he got in the car accident.
Well, that was the most recent, because that was one of the issues. I mean, that whole thing where he drives away from his wife and his wife smashing the window with his thing and he crashes into a tree. He apparently was under the influence of medication at that time, and that led to his crash into the tree, and didn't get like consequences from that. So
I would think being harried would sort of mitigate that situation.
What's that?
I would think being harried would be a mitigating factor. Like, somebody's trying to break my car, I need to get out of here.
Yeah, he has like the self-defense argument as well as the I'm on prescription pills. But I think the one where he was pulled over, it was like in Florida, I'm pretty sure. He was pulled over on the side of the road. And he has better attorneys than I would, obviously, and I don't want to make any definitive statements, but allegedly he may have been like intoxicated even under the, use or whatever. And they tried to write him a DUI, but later in court, these things get thrown out. And it's found to be prescription medication, but I don't know how they would justify abuse versus like maybe his doctor overprescribed him, or it just didn't set well, like depending on how much they ate. Like I know I've eaten the same edible 2 different days. And I believe that it was the same dose.
I'm not sure that I don't know this, and it's probably different in different states, but I know that at least some of the laws are written to be it's based on the fact that you're impaired. Whether or not alcohol or some other drug caused the impairment is inconsequential, and whether you were prescribed it is inconsequential. And a lot of medications list that, like, don't operate heavy machinery until you know how this medicine will affect you. I'm not sure that you waive any kind of liability for that by just saying like, oh, the doctor prescribed it and it's not alcohol. You were still impaired.
Oh, that's true, I guess. And you make a really good point there, because of what they say. They do have, and you're right, is I think different places. But I suppose that I do think that there's a big psychological component, sociological component.
Yes. Now, how society responds is totally different, right?
Yeah, but you're totally right. And I'm
written. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad the law is more like, what's the word? Agnostic. About
Tao, oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. About the cause.
But Tao has his hand up. I wanted to let him jump in there.
Oh,
yeah. The way you get off of these things is it's hard to demonstrate impairment when there's not a legal standard for it established. That's been one of the issues with a lot of the cannabis legalization issues, and thinking about regulating driving while high. It's very difficult to establish a objectively valid metric to judge impairment on a lot of, and probably alcohol too, but we have one that everybody just agrees to. But
exactly. No, that's a great point. And that's actually the crux of what I wanted to say, and I'll let Tal say now. But yeah, it is that sort of like, what is okay, what is not okay, and what we all agree with, and everyone will be different. But it is hard to judge what really is intoxicated after all. Even you could have your heart pumping for a million reasons, not all of them pharmaceutical.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like a whole bunch of times that people shouldn't be driving just because they're like emotionally devastated by something or whatever, like after a breakup. I mean, it's like it's tough. That's a weird one.
I want to let Tal jump in because I have a comment related to what you guys have said.
Okay, so I won't. Well, I was going to say, the Pop Brothers at Law just did a post that I believe California has come to the conclusion that THC content in your body does not mean impaired. So like, there's no way to. They're not gonna give you a DWI for having too much THC in you, supposedly.
They're trying different shit though for cannabis. I'll tell you that. They have like iPads that track your eyes and make you follow the dot type thing. And they're trying to come out with technology. I think it will be fought in court because just like we were talking about with alcohol, it is accepted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's great. There are some people that can drive with the legal limit and be fucked up. And there are some people that can drink more than the legal limit and drive and not get in accidents. So it's not black and white as we'd like to think it is.
There is tolerance, yeah.
Tolerance
And
really
not
plays
everybody
a great
is the
deal.
same degree of intoxicated when their blood alcohol level is 0.1%, right? I mean, they just aren't. Yeah.
Well,
And that's with everything too, right? People that smoke a lot of weed aren't going to be stupid, driving, but someone that just did it that first time might be dangerous.
Yeah, it's not the best idea to
with
get behind
every
the wheel
drug.
after
yeah.
trying any drug for the first time. I would surmise,
Yeah.
unless it's like caffeine or something. I don't know. But even that you could get hooked up on.
But
I
raise
know
my
people who have a head change on Benadryl, and I just can't even empathize.
Right.
Like I've never had that experience,
so weird how different things affect different people. But I raised my hand to change the subject if we can. I was going to ask Nudie what she's grown in the facility and in her place, because I love hearing about strains and what's going on.
Wow.
Good question.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to join you guys. I'll just
So good to have you.
Thank you. This is actually my first case. So I am growing things, but at home I'm not growing. I'm gearing up to start up again, but this is the first grow break I've had for my own medical grow in like 5 years. Usually, and for me, it's like grow after grow after grow after grow. So it's been nice, but also I've been missing it. So I don't currently have anything started yet, but I got a big lineup coming. And at work, it's very exciting. Actually, I just started it right when I started there in August. At the beginning of August, we started a pheno hunt. So it was like my first big project. So these plants are now in flower, the first room. So 90 different cultivars times 2. So I got twins doing their thing. And then same thing will happen in the second room. So we're going to have, I'm not going to mention, there's some big breeders in this lineup, Colorado Genetics, Emerald Legacy. We got some Mac in there, so Capillator, Alien Genetics, just some really cool stuff. And so I'm really excited. These strains, there's 14 different strains, and I believe I had a total of around probably 170 individuals altogether. So within the 14 strains. So I'm mostly excited about that. We're hitting like lime flavors, apple, banana, grape, coffee, all the things. Let's just do it. So I feel like I am the queen of home grow chaos. And now I've just now brought that to work. So I'm like nice chaos.
That sounds like fun. 170 plants, all different.
Oh, it's maniacness. Just everything that goes with them. And there's the ones we have in there now, they're so vigorous and like, it's just so cool. It's like one of my favorite things. And not just a little tiny piece of what I'm doing is the R&D. It's a smaller farm. So we got 5 grow rooms. 3 of them are bedrooms or mom rooms, 1 nursery, teenage room, mom room. So 3 bedrooms, 2 flower rooms. We're expanding. And then I also am overseeing 3 micro cultivation facilities in Nova Scotia, which is the province next to us. And so we have over there another, I guess I'll say 8 grow rooms. So
Do they
with
get
that,
the fish water too, or no? Those other ones?
no, so they're using the living soil. They
Okay.
couldn't bring in the aquaponics piece. Our farm is unique in that way. And we're hitting the higher COAs. So I mean, that's got to be something to do with the fish.
For sure.
Yeah. But so yeah, we are a nursery. So we also sell genetics and clones to other licensed producers here in Canada from the east to the west. We have sales doing that, clones and mothers. If you know me, you know they're my favorite thing ever. And so I get to spend a lot of time with mothers. And then basically my R&D flowering rooms are bonus buds. So we can release those as like small batch craft cannabis, just like fun releases, spring release, summer release, winter release. People love it. Different stuff, trendy things, market driven.
So you're going to plan on reducing the 14 cultivars to like 3 or 4, or how many are you planning to keep when you're done with the hunt?
So within each strain, so we'll have the 14 strains total, and within each, I want to bring those down to, right now, there's probably anywhere between 6 and 15 females to down to like 2 each, 2 of the best. So I got my checklists ready. I've been watching YouTube videos on pheno hunting. Like, I know my experience. I've grown over 200 cultivar strains myself. So I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I got my second. I got a great, I hate calling him a kid, but he is. He's 21 to 22 years old. But I know Jack said something earlier about I don't know who you guys were talking about, but somebody who doesn't consume cannabis, but is actually in touch with the plant, the weed plant, and just is so passionate. That's this kid right here. Like, never met somebody like this that is so natural with the cannabis plant, but doesn't consume it. He grows weed at home and has been growing for like a really long time, maybe longer than me, and grows for his dad because his dad needs it medically. So he just respects the plant so much that he decided he's not going to consume it unless he needs to.
No, Genevieve, I'm afraid you fundamentally misunderstand that if he doesn't smoke, that means all of his opinions are invalid, and everyone out there. And if you didn't grow for 30 years beforehand, you're not a real grower. And I'm sorry to say that I've been told this enough times that it's just inculcated in me. And I just want to let you know that you're wrong on all accounts. No, I totally agree with you. I'm really happy to hear that, honestly, that he has this sort of green thumb.
That's pretty good.
My
I
thought
like that
is,
theory, Nudie, but he just doesn't know he needs it right now. I think he needs it right now.
Everyone uses medically, whether they know it or not. I believe that's strong.
That's but
it might benefit him. I do believe that, like, even if you don't have an ailment, that in 10, 20, 30, 50 years, they're going to look at cannabis as a nutritional supplement. Like, CBD is going to be added just like a protein in a shake. CBD is going to be on the nutrition fact label. How much CBD is in this?
I was in Detroit, shout out to Detroit, and I got a drink at a bar that was a non-alcoholic drink that was CBD infused. I was like, fuck yeah, give me that CBD infused.
I've been seeing a lot of that around here. There's a kombucha that's CBD infused that I loved. And it's just pretty commonplace in California at this point, thankfully. And I think a lot of it's actually like better quality than like some of the gas station junk that like people test, and there's like 1 milligram or 0 milligrams in a 100 milligram serving or whatever it's supposed to be.
Your CBD at the gas station. There's
some people do. It's like
people
the truck drivers or whatever.
CBD pillows and bath and bed and bathy works. Bed. Bath. I've seen some.
Don't make fun of my like CBD pillowcase.
CBD, yes, the CBD salt, bath salts, right?
There's a arcade over in Portland, Oregon, which is fairly close to where I'm at, called Ground Control. It's kind of legendary in this area, and it's an adult arcade. They have these crazy pinball tournaments. But anyways, they have a CBD drink, and when I was over there last, I had 2 of them. It was very, very good. I love the feeling, and it was really cool to do it. People were asking me questions about it, and that is really cool. I was cool. I went there to have a couple of beers, and I'd seen those, and I was like, I'm just going to drink these. They weren't alcoholic, but I drank them. So, and it was really cool. They were tasty. I loved the feeling. It was awesome.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I thought it was pretty sweet. I got they had an event in the park, and one of the vendors had the nerd rope, and it was 200 milligrams of CBD. That's the first time I've seen one with like a decent amount of CBD. I'm sorry. I think
that's a lot.
Yeah, 200. I was like, fuck yeah. And I asked the guy, I said, am I going to feel a lot from this? And he's like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, give it to me. So I ate it, and I did feel a little bit, but it was like very subtle. I couldn't say that it was like a huge.
CBD is more mellow. It's not like a high.
Yeah.
It's like your joints are lubricated. You're just like chilling. Like, it eases a lot of people's anxiety. It does help some people sleep depending on the dose. But CBD is definitely not like intoxicating in my experience and opinion. But some people, like, if you've never taken any drugs in your life and like you're like Christian grandma or something out there, take some CBD, she's gonna be like, "Ooh, like I feel something. I got a head change."
CBD is the gateway to THC, honestly, especially with senior citizens. Like I still currently am medicating my ladies back in Alberta are still ordering my CBD, and like I got ladies that rub it on their feet and like swear by it, like they need it. And some of them do get like, "Are you sure there's no THC in here?" And I'm like, I do the COA. There is less than 0.7% THC in this, but it's just, I think it's an overall feeling of well-being, you know, that like euphoria that you can sometimes get from THC. I think people can get that from CBD, and they're not used to
too.
I think
if you're growing it like
if you can get some terpenes in there.
Yeah, the aromatherapeutic element of it.
Entourage, exactly. Yeah.
Like there was like I saw some like conspiracy theory chart, and like one of the things said essential oils cure all illness, and like I have like run into those people that believe that. But I do think that they have their place. Like I've seen there are white papers like in I believe it was done in Japan, where they use like limonene on one floor of a hospital, and then the next floor they use the regular cleaner, and the limonene floor had like way less infections. And so that's just one example, but there are definitely cases where I do think terpenes, or just aromatherapy using different essential oils can provide benefits, and we get that in cannabis. Hoda Herb says that like he likes to use it outside, but even when you don't, it's like a little piece of nature in your glass. You know, whether it's a pipe or a bowl or a bong, whatever joint, you're bringing that little bit of nature into you when you're using it. It's like you get that, like kind of like when you walk outside through the forest, you smell the pinene from the pine needles in the trees. There's a term called Shinrin Yoku, which means forest bathing in Japan, where people walk through the forest to bathe in terpenes essentially, and it like lifts their mood. A lot of people that are depressed are often told to go walk out in nature to experience like the fresh air and the smell of the flowers, essentially stop and smell the roses kind of thing. So definitely there's lots of benefits outside of just the THC, and I'm glad that you're able to provide, because in Canada, one of the benefits of legalization, you guys can go to the post office and get a box that says for cannabis, right? And it's like specifically labeled, this is a cannabis shipping, whatever. So it's legal and
scent-free bags for cannabis.
Scent-free bags.
Yeah, there's this place. It's probably about an hour and a half drive away from Portland, Oregon. It's called Bagby Hot Springs. It's like a legendary hot springs around here, and it's like in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I've been going there for years. I'll post some pictures of there in our group chat, but it's really crazy. It's all natural water. It was discovered, it's up on it's on the Indian land out there, and it is so crazy the feeling you get out there. Like when I had open heart surgery, one of the first things I do when I first started smoking like 8 months afterwards is I went out there, and just to be out there in nature and just knowing that like you can't even, like, you're like an hour drive away from cell phone service out there. I mean, it is out there, and it is very cool to be out in nature. I totally agree with that.
It's healing for a lot of people, like city slickers, like Tao. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Genevieve.
No, I was just saying I want to go there now.
It definitely is good to get out in nature, and even be alone in nature is good, but
all day. Yeah.
I see you walking out there with your dog and your cats, strolling through Canada and enjoying nature.
Yeah, I live in the woods, literally.
See, I think that is part of probably your healing and a lot of people's healing is just getting outside.
He's in a winter wonderland right now.
Circulation, walk.
Yeah, nature is so healing. I know when I need to be recharged, I just go and throw my back up against a tree that's calling out, and I swear that works. It's an old indigenous. Go get your energy from a good old tree.
Yeah, speaking of that, Jack, did you want to talk about that report that I had spoken about earlier? Do you think that would be a good topic? Not to put you on. I mean, I guess it's a question to everyone on the panel.
Yes.
Yes. Are you interested?
About that? That was very interesting, Matthew. I only got caught like the very beginning, but yeah. Let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah, why not? A small little thing here.
I think I have enabled you the ability to share the screen. Good. Here we go.
Yes. So right. So this is a report I talked about on my Instagram yesterday, and a lot of people had a lot of cool comments about it and interesting perspectives. And it's not the first time this has come up. Admittedly, I've talked about it. Many people have talked about it. Anytime I've mentioned somoclonal variation, and, in a pithy robuste, then that is what I was talking about here. This is a paper called Accumulation of Somatic Mutations Leads to Genetic Mosaicism in Cannabis. And there's three people, from the University of Guelph, or Guelph like self. Guelph like self.
No, it's Guelph.
Is it Guelph?
Is Christian, hold on, let me just show you something. Is Christian the one that's not listed at the top of the page?
I know, it is the case.
That's because
funny how that works.
Probably a dissertation candidate, a PhD candidate, and the other two were published professors. So the other two are sub-authors, but the main author is probably the Christian person. And these other two people are like on a committee, and they're putting their name on the paper to get credit for it, for their publication. But that's often the case when the lead author is somebody that's not listed up at the top there. I
really appreciate that. Was very enriching to hear, because honestly, I was when I was talking about this, I made sure to talk about all three of them because I wanted to make sure they all got that credit. And I thought it was really unfortunate that it wasn't showing up with their profile, but I guess that would make sense.
So that grad student just probably doesn't have any other citations to put there. Like that's listing 62 citations and some 77 publications or whatever. The lead author on this, and that's usually what happens. I mean, the reason those other two probably have 62 and 77 is because they put their names as co-authors on a lot of their grad students' published works.
And isn't the last name usually the PI?
No, it would be the first name.
I'm sorry, the first one. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the principal investigator would and well, I mean, it depends. If this is
depends. Places are different, right?
And it depends on whether this is just the primary research product for that research report. It's the lead author would put their name there. Usually the lead author is the PI, but sometimes other researchers or other people involved in a project will be lead author on their own sub papers.
I see. But yeah, so basically this report talks about something that a lot of people have reported observing, and that is the idea that when you take cuttings from plants, those cuttings change. And I'll be talking about this on the Future Cannabis Project on December at 7 p.m. PST on Wednesday, December 1st. So here's a picture. This was a honey banana cultivar, apparently. And so they took a cutting from 59 centimeters, 151 centimeters, and 226 centimeters from, my understanding is the soil. Yes, and they did next generation sequencing on the genome of these different cuttings. And what they found was that bottom had the least changes, and middle and top had the most changes, which was really interesting. So there's this big diversion in like replication mutations from the cuttings as they grew. And so basically the implications of this is that if you have these changes and they affect things that really matter to you, not just like basic metabolic processes, but literally like cannabinoid pathways and terpene synthesis pathways, then of course this is going to have great ramifications for legacy cuts that people have they've had them for like 10, 15, 20 years. This is, and they make
all of the clone-only varieties that people are passing around that think are exact copies of the original. I mean, I've run into this. I ran 3 clones of GG4 that 2 of the plants were not the same as the other plant. And they were supposed to all be clones of the same mother, right? So yeah, I think this blows a hole through a lot of that argument.
Right. And you know, it's like it's old hat. Like a lot of people understand that this is kind of how aging works. And in other sort of botanical and agricultural fields, like this is an understood premise, right? Like that you might take a cutting from multiple plants, but they aren't all going to develop the exact same. Not only that, but like
We've called
of
this
course,
genetic drift, though. I mean, people in
yes,
cannabis
it's
have
not
said
It's,
genetic drift, and they're not using the right terminology,
that's right.
but
They
they
aren't.
have identified that this has been happening for decades. Because I know people have
Yeah.
said, "Oh, Chem 91, it's not like it was back in the 90s," you know, and
Right.
this is
Probably
what they're
not,
referring
right?
to.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I wanted to go into that a little bit. So genetic drift, what is it? What is it not? And
Oh, is this epigenetic or genetic? Yeah, go for
that's
it.
actually that's a really great point there, right? Is that expression can be plastic, right? And based on a bunch of different contexts that are kind of that weren't even necessarily talked about in this study, and the authors say this multiple times. But so genetic drift is like a population level, like as I understand it, germline, mutational change, like with allele frequency and that sort of a thing. But
Yeah,
here,
exactly. It's from population genetics. So
exactly.
It has to do with like the founder effect that, a certain group of organisms arrive on an island or something, and they just don't happen to have the genes for one thing or the other, or they have a larger representation of one gene or another. And it's not necessarily for any specific selection reason. That's one way that genetic drift. It's just a change in the frequency of alleles in a population through time. And it's not something that we would observe in an individual. So that's why I always thought that genetic drift isn't the right word for these changes that occur within a plant.
100%, right? And so what we're seeing is like replication errors essentially.
Right.
It's like if it was software code and there were little errors and more errors, you get more errors, and cumulatively this changes, and then that multiplies. And especially they found differences in very gene rich parts of the various chromosomes. And so here, like this table just says it very flatly. I'm being very long-winded, but like for example, the polyketide pathway, the cannabinoid pathway, the MEP pathway, the monoterpene pathway, right? MEV, sesquiterpene. So these are all genes, right? Or processes. These are all genes related to those processes. These are massively important. We've talked about it on the study here, the alevitol synthase, alevitolic acid cyclase, right? These are important for the very beginning and end, and for some of these other pathways, processes in the synthesis of cannabinoids and terpenes. If they don't happen, and just to give you some context, over here it says gene, pi to the power of b. Anything higher than 2, the authors were saying, was kind of a significant change, right? And here we have like 8. And I forget the exact value off the top of my head, but it's basically it was a ratio of something to something else, but I'm blanking on that topic. But anything higher than 2 in this column is pretty significant, and you can say some of these are pretty significantly affected. The CBGAS, right? TCAS, like these are breakdowns or changes in the pathway of these processes. So obviously, that's going to have some great implications for what people do with clone onlys, like you were saying, legacy cuts, and also how people want to store their plants. They talk about later in the paper that cryopreservation is recommended, but nobody's got the resources for that. Most people don't, anyways. So it could be that your cuts are really as ephemeral as you think, as special as perhaps you maybe even didn't realize.
It's almost like popping a seed at a certain extent, like it could have as much variation from a seed line to a clone line if this is suggesting that there's as much change as we're seeing. But weirdly enough, it seems, even with this information, like you'll go over to Mitten Canico, and Spartan's about to jump out here, so I want to kind of transition it to giving him a chance to jump in. But if you walk through, and I'll give Spartan a chance to, I guess, give us feedback on this, but when you walk through those rooms where you've been running the same clones for what it feels like now a few years, have you noticed a bunch of change, or is it pretty consistent with how it started when you guys got booted up with your oldest varieties?
Yeah, we've probably 2 years now, and really we are cycling through so many cultivars, still trying to find our keepers, I guess. But There are some that we've had from the beginning, like Hans Sullenberger, McFlurry was pretty early on, and they're pretty much the same. I don't think they've changed a whole lot at all, honestly, but it's only 2 years. Is that really a long time?
Well, this seems like on the same day they're taking one from the bottom of the plant versus the top of the plant, and they're saying the genetics are
Oh,
changing. And
Yeah, you know, it could be
no,
so
we don't see
swayed.
that. They're pretty. No, we still see it being very uniform. I think throughout the because we're taking off usually one mom, sometimes two at the most, and we're taking 160. No, we're taking more. We're taking about 200 cuts. We keep 160 once we plant them into a media, and then we narrow down to 150 before we go into flower, and that's pretty uniform at that point. I don't see anything crazy things, sticking out from the group. They're all still pretty uniform. I do have one question to kind of leave you guys with, though. I mean, if you want, have to talk about it, but I wonder if those changes can be reversed at all with like a tissue culture, or are you pretty locked into that afterwards?
That's a good question. Can the phenotype be rescued?
Yeah,
You have to go back to
wondering.
the original stock that had the correct genetics to
I would think.
Right, 'cause
Yeah,
the
you wouldn't
genetics
be able to
couldn't-
unwind the random mutations that had sort of accumulated. There's definitely some reasons that some strains would be more resistant to sort of breaking down, I would say. It depends on sort of the mix of dominance and the important genes that you're tracking, and whether the deleterious mutations become dominant and expressive. One of the big problems with asexual reproduction just across all of biology is that you accumulate deleterious traits and there's no way to weed them out. There's no recombination. It's recombining your genes with another organism and doing that so sort of like half a mine and half a years that essentially weeds out the deleterious mutations that build up through time. So eventually this is what happens with asexual reproduction. And it's one of the leading hypotheses about why sex developed in the first place in biology, like why you wouldn't just create copies of yourself instead of like finding a partner, which dilutes yourself by half into the next generation. It's like a huge sacrifice in terms of genetics, in terms of the replicators. And the benefit of agreeing to like get cut in half is that you recombine genes and you weed out deleterious recessives usually, but any deleterious trait.
Right.
That's a really succinct way to put it.
All right, well, I'm going to leave you guys. I got to get going, but thanks for having me. As always, I love talking with you guys. And this was a really good episode. I liked it a lot. Shout out to chat. It's always, and there was probably about 4 or 5 people helping us out in chat saying, remember to hit that thumbs up, remember to hit that subscribe. So I appreciate everybody that's helping us out in chat. Appreciate all of our followers. And I hope you all have a good day. I'm headed over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Hey, I'm excited. I want to announce, I don't know if this audience has heard it or not, but we announced that on our last show that we got Ed Rosenthal as an interview coming up a week from today. So we're excited about that. So catch us next week for his show. But fuck the MCMA and cheers, guys. Hope you have a good night.
Peace out, Spartan.
Cheers, Spartan. Thank you as always for joining us. You can find him at Spartan Grown and email him at spartangrown@gmail.com if you're trying to contact him. You can also find his commercial work at Mitten Canna Co. They do some really awesome stuff over there. We talked about it a little bit tonight as a reference for even this very paper that we're looking at right now, that I'm going to pass it back over to Matthew to give us some more info. And maybe we could wrap up with this and go into all of our final thoughts and shout outs.
Matthew, what was
yeah?
really interesting was that everybody says you should take your clones from the tops, and according to this paper, that's where the most differentiating things happen, correct?
Wait, I've always said take them from the bottom. I just want to put that out
There you
there.
go.
I'm not one of those people that always said take them from the top.
I know a lot of
No,
take it
don't
from
be
the bottom people.
Everywhere. I take
What?
them from
Wrong on the
there,
internet? I can't be.
No, Doc has said that for a long time. I believe he said
Yeah.
because they're woodier, and I know a lot of people that you don't really hear too many people fighting for the middle. It's either like take them from the top, newest, freshest.
I agree
take
with
it from
you,
the bottom.
Yeah, my
oldest,
argument for the
most
bottom is
lumbery.
about carbohydrate load. It's that the older growth has a better carbohydrate load, and it can support root growth better than newer growth can. But the fact that it lines up well with this genetic stuff is very convenient for me.
I agree, and I also thought it was they're also a lot harder. I feel like they're more hardened off. It tends to be the case.
That's
Some
my
people-
experience too.
Yeah.
I agree with Dr. Coco as well. I am just gonna say I like the bottom ones better.
Isn't it funny when you're conveniently right though? Like with the drought stressing thing,
Yes,
I had no
yes.
idea, and then you're like, "Wait, Jack, there's actually a study out of Guelph that supports what you're saying," and I was like, "Oh, awesome! Like
There-
send that my way," you know. But I don't want to be too
So many
only find the
people
stuff that agrees with you.
top
I
only.
know. That's
So
one of
this-
those like I knew I was right moments. Yeah.
It feels good to be
Yes.
right sometimes. We can all admit it. And the pat on the back. The bottom clones are genetically less diverse and maybe also have more woody substance and less carbohydrates. Is something that I just was reminded of from Dr. MJ to make it root
So
better.
so apparently it's a nucleotide diversity. That's what the pi sort of denotes. And like they were saying here, the top sample had the most unique high impact mutations with 1,234 or 40%. Next, the bottom with 247 or 12%. And lastly, the middle was 63 or 6%. So that in case people want the sound bite, right? This is what they're talking about. And over here, they said there were high impact mutations divided into 4 categories: frame shift, premature stop codon, splice site, and stop loss mutations. And yeah, I want to just go back and sort of revisit this right here. These are some terpene synthase genes for limonene, beta-myrcene, alpha-pinene, epsilon beta osamine synthase, right? Beta-myrcene. And these are all higher than 2 here. So that nucleotide diversity, is higher. It means it was exceeding that sort of limiter.
Well, if it was a stop codon, that if I understand that correctly, that could mean it's going to like basically, if it continues to act in a negative way, it'll eventually shut off that genetic. So it'll become like a passive carry genetic that's not going to express itself. And in which case, this could mean it's not going to produce that terpene, depending on that clone. Or I could be overextending my limited.
A bunch of things like that
there.
can happen. Oh, well, actually, it's. I mean, I don't even know all of the things that could happen, but yeah, if you start messing with the start and stop codons, really quickly you start to have major problems in the replication of genes. I definitely agree with you. That was the one that shot out to me because even at my limited level of understanding, compared to someone who works with this professionally all the time, I knew that was a big deal. But again, I just want to be clear that and other people in the comments when I posted and when I talked about this on video, were quick to point this out, which is very fair, which is that this is pioneering work. The authors said so much themselves. It's unclear how generalized this response is, although there's precedent for it being this way, and they make a pretty good case about it in the report, kind of mentioning how plants and mammals, things that grow and live longer, tend to have less of this problem. There seems to be some sort of a suppressing factor, perhaps multiple factors, and things that live for short periods of time tend to be more sensitive, this kind of a thing.
Yeah, and so like proofreading things that make sure the copies are better made.
That's the process I most think of, but I wasn't sure if there were other.
Yeah, and I'd want to go through a little bit deeper in this, but the fact that there are these mutations doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing anything. So like inserting a stop codon, inserting a stop codon where there wasn't one before, that's a mutation. That could be a significant mutation. It could kill the plant. It could also do absolutely nothing. So I'm tempted to think that what they're saying is that this is sort of the probabilities that actually problematic mutations could occur, not that all of these mutations that are occurring are problematic. But I'd have to get deeper into the.
I think it's a volume thing. Like if there's a higher number of it, there's just a higher likelihood. If you gamble 1,000 times, you're likely going to lose money versus if you only gamble one time.
Yeah, exactly. And so if they're finding there's like 8 random changes in this part and there's only 2 random changes in the other part, well, you'd rather be in the part that only had 2 random changes, but none of those random changes might do a damn thing. They might all be totally benign. It's when you finally get a random change that really can screw something up or that turns off an important gene. A stop codon tells the RNA basically to stop reading that gene at that point. So it could cut something in half and you wouldn't get something that was very important. Otherwise, it could just be in a non-coding region of the DNA or something and not really mean much at all.
So just like last week, we've got a garden to check out. So I want to give Matthew a chance to wrap up, and then we're going to spotlight Noah before we do our shout outs. I'm going to let it run a few minutes long this week, not to disrespect the Michigan Bros Grow Show, but to give a nod to Noah, and we're going to check out his garden here in just a second.
Absolutely. So let me wrap up. What you say is correct, and the sound bites from these people are also incongruent. So they say that they're very careful. They say the nucleodiversity is above average, and as a result, could indicate initial signs of decay in the cannabinoid pathway, for example. And you're totally right; it could be benign. And they did note that a lot of these changes happened in really gene-rich parts of the chromosome, the euchromatin. So it kind of makes me more dubious about it, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
More research is needed for sure to see to what extent. And certainly people were saying that their plants were still okay after this time. So it's not like it's necessarily always going to be so bad.
Yeah. And I guess the point I was pushing back on there a little bit was just the impression, like looking at those raw numbers, you would think I'm going to take a clone. It's going to be radically different than the mother because of all these changes that happen. I mean,
see, what I think is this is technology seeing it before the human eye. This is like just like when we're testing something where you can see it under different vision or whatever. I think this is technology showing you whether it's 1 month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. It's just detecting something that's going to happen down the road or not happen at all. Like you're saying, it depends on the specific gene line and everything like that.
So we're watching the painter paint before the painter is done showing us the picture.
I love that they use Cannabis Growers Personal Communication 2020 as a reference.
Well, for the anecdote, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Sometimes you have to do that. What is the quote?
There's only so much with background, and it's probably talking about they're noticing a difference in their clone or something.
It's literally, I'm positive that's exactly what it was. It was people saying, yo, and they even say it earlier that.
That's what I said, yeah.
They called it, yeah.
I had a clone that wasn't as good as the mother, and what's going on? Yeah. Yeah,
well, cool
that's
research.
Good ethnographic research. I don't have a problem quoting anonymous cannabis growers from Personal Communications.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, is there anything else that you'd like to include before we give Noah the floor?
Absolutely not. Let's talk to Noah.
Oh, don't worry about me, guys. I'm listening very, very intently right now. So,
okay.
Oh no, don't. We can always go to my garden. I'm going to be growing. There'll be plants in my room my last day on this planet, man. I love this stuff. I'm a nerd for it. So I shout out to Shane for introducing me to all you guys and bringing me here and starting this because, man, I have so much fun. I learned so much from all you guys. And I was listening very intently.
I appreciate it. And I really liked the commentary with Dr. MJ. And I'm glad we got to talk about it a little bit, but I am curious.
That's why I didn't say anything. I was very attentive. Yeah, so this overflow plant right here, these plants didn't stack as well as they normally do, but with my old system. But I mean, these are pretty big buds. This is a gallon of water right here, and
that ain't bad at all, Noah. Most people watching are pretty damn happy if they
when you use a gallon of water as your scale object, you're doing something right. Just
it's
right
a
off
crude
the bat,
scale,
okay?
but very effective.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I learned so much from all you guys that it's showing in here. And just wait, I'm only 42. I'm going to be doing this for the next 25, 30 years. So I dig it. This one right here, it doesn't look as crazy as some of this other stuff, but this is Sunday Driver, and this plant right here is so crazily like. I swear it's got to be in the 30s THC wise. I mean, it really does. I'm going to take some pictures and post them on my Instagram. This is the overflow plant. I'm going to let it go a little week. So that's going to be interesting. I have to take this one down tomorrow. And then all this, I have to trim this all tomorrow. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. But and then these are a couple do-si-dos. If you see, I put these in 7s. These are all in 7s. I put these in 5s, so they're not quite getting enough soil. So I'm having to supplement quite a bit with, I'm using BioViz, all organic stuff. But, and then this apple fritter right here, man, this is pretty big for only being 5 weeks. this is Tropicana Punch right here. Tropicana Cookies cross Purple Punch. And that one is like so dark, it's like black. But yeah, no, I just wanted to show everybody, and but no, I'll never take away from any type of science when it comes to growing for my grower. We can go to my grower anytime.
This isn't taken away. This is called adding to the content. This is
Yes.
a wonderful addition.
Nudie Grows.
Well, you know, and man, I'm lucky, man. You know, there's a lot of guys that can't that don't have a grow room like this, and they're just the access to be able to do this. And you know, this is only 10 plants right here. So these are 5,000 watt lights right here. And yeah, I'm very lucky to be able to do it health wise, and I enjoy it so much. And yeah, no, that's all I got to say, really. I just wanted to show you guys. And yeah, no, I was totally interested in what you guys were just saying about the cloning and stuff. That is a really, really cool. And I'm a nerd for all this stuff. So
I'll just say I'm glad that you're healthy. I remember you were scooting around there for a little while and needing people to assist you.
Sure.
And it's always happy to see you healthy and moving around. I'm sure the plants are happy to have you as your normal caregiver, and looking over them. They look very happy, and I know they might not be as big as you once had in your old system, but I'm sure you're going to get there eventually. So yeah, I want to give you the chance.
These are all organic. These are all organic. Yeah, I'm Noah the Grower. I'll take some pictures of this overflow and this sherbet right here, and post it to my Instagram today or tomorrow. And you can find all my content there. And yeah, anybody has any questions about what I got going on, I'm more than willing to help. And I'm doing the organics, but I'm going to be doing cocoa next, and I'm sure I'll be going to Cocoa for Cannabis because that would be the guy that I talk to. And yeah, I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys all next week, man.
Can't wait to see you next week. I want to come visit you whenever the Sunday driver is done, because I love both the parents. It's Fruity Pebbles OG across the Great Pie, 2 strains that I love very dearly. Fruity Pebbles OG is one of my favorites, and it's really hard to find. And the cross itself, Sunday driver that I've had, has been okay to pretty good, but I'm sure yours is going to be much better than the stuff that I'm finding in the market around here. So I'd love to try that sometime, Noah. And with that said, thank you so much for showing off the garden this week. It's cool to see the update, and I'm sure we're going to see more progression as it goes forward. So thank you again so much for that. Next up, Dr. OJ.
Hey, yeah, I didn't get to say hello at the beginning of the episode. I realized like about 20 minutes in, I'm like, hey, did I ever say anything? So I'll get to say hello to everybody now. I'm Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I'm going to be doing a new podcast this week. I'm going on the Green Table podcast. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Check it out. And I'm doing another big, yesterday we did a premiere on my YouTube channel, went really well, gave away Viper Spectra XS 4000. And next week I'm got the biggest light from Mars Hydra, the FC 8000. I'm running the final tests on it tomorrow, and that video will be out. I'll be doing another premiere giveaway. So look for that. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and grower love to everybody out there.
Sorry for not giving you the introduction. I definitely got a little sidetracked there with having Miss Nudie Grows in here for first time in a long time.
Yeah, no, it was cool.
Also, the American one jumped in as we were doing the introduction,
guys.
so it moved all my people around on the screen. So I tried to like bounce around in a certain order, so I lost you on the track of things. But I wanted to say
I didn't feel slighted at all, Jack, and I was excited to hear from Miss Nudie as well. So no worries at all.
I just want to say I watched the Grow Light review, and I thought it was cool that I think it was like a certain number of diodes or something was the number that you get. People had to guess.
Yeah.
And,
so people that are loyal have figured that out. I try to pick some number from something about the light, from the stats about the light, or the performance, or the price, or the model, or whatever. So with that one I did, the winning number is 301, and it was for the LM301B diodes that were on that fixture. So it's a little bit of inside knowledge for like loyal users, maybe have a bit of an advantage to potentially win. So
it was a cool nod for sure to the light, and just the little details like that I certainly appreciate as a viewer of the content. So hats off to you for that, and keep on making that great content at Cocoa for Cannabis and on the YouTube. So thank you again for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next week and checking out all the other content.
Grow love, buddy.
And next up we've got Matthew Gates.
Yeah, I also realized like 8 minutes in, I'm like, I don't think Dr. MJ Coco said anything. That was weird. Maybe I just missed it somehow. But now that has solved that mystery. So if you're interested in more integrated pest management information, I work professionally in the industry. I'm here to help people out at all scales and all levels because I'm very passionate about it. You can ask many of my followers who have applied me with many questions on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on my YouTube channel Zenthanol, also on my Twitter at SyncAngel and at SyncAngel on Instagram. So I am very interested in working with people because I think IPM is very important. Plant health is very important, and knowing all the intricacies is going to very much help you out. So you can find my content in those spaces. I also have an article coming out from Skunk Magazine, an issue about how to assess expertise and how to understand how to analyze things that you don't understand, essentially. Because in this world, in this day and age, it can be very hard to see who's right, who's wrong, and there are many factors that compete, and sometimes they are not, working in your favor. So, and you don't always have 100% of the information. So that article will be coming out soon. And shout out to everyone in the chat. I really enjoyed the engagement, and I'm glad we got to talk more science. I think people are really liking the reports. Maybe we should do more of that.
I certainly look forward to doing some more of that in the future. Also want to do more chat engagement in the future. I know this week we were just so engaged in our own conversation that we didn't get to talk to the chat. And Miss Nudie might not know this, but we even brought some people up from the chat over these past few weeks and brought them onto the show live, which was pretty cool to do with some of like the loyal listeners. We'd see whoever would jump in. If it was somebody we recognize, we'd bring them on up. So that was a fun little thing to do. And I guess I'll pass it to you, Miss Nudie Grows, as I'll always know you, Miss Nudie Grows. I know you've got many names, Genevieve Eats Weed on YouTube and all that good stuff, but you're the Canna Boss Mama from Canada up there that I always will remember as the home grower who helps out other home growers. Coaching, I think is what you used to call it, but much respect. And thank you so much for joining us again.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jack. I am still a grow coach. I will still do that always and forever. I just do professional things now as well, but I always have time for my grow people, and I'm still available in the DMs. People know that about me and hit me up daily, and I appreciate it. I love talking about weed. People are respectful of my time, and they appreciate sometimes it takes me 3 days to get back to them. But it is what it is. So I'm just glad that I got to come out. It's kind of late night for me now that I live in the future over here on the East Coast. I'm super glad that I got to hang out with everyone. I have shout outs for all of you. I respect you guys madly and love you madly. And I want you all to say hi to those that I miss. Brandon, miss seeing him. And I will catch you guys all on Instagram. You can find me at Miss Nudie Grows. I am actually, before I leave, I didn't even mention this, but I am being flown out to Niagara Falls tomorrow as a VIP speaker at the Grow Up conference here in Canada. So I went from like wanting to attend this as an attendee 4 years ago, as Jack was saying, like just in my little craft room growing weed, to being sought out and going into one, like all the top growers in Canada were invited to a luncheon that I'm going to be on a panel of and speak at. And we're going to talk about everything to do with growing and the culture and cannabis, the industry regulations. I'm super excited. So if anyone's watching and they're going to Niagara for Grow Up, I'm going to be there. And there's a whole psychedelic segment this year, summit, mushrooms. I'm super pumped. So I'm heading there for the week. And the other shout out, I guess, is Stewart Farms. Mwah! Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Miss Nudie. It was really a pleasure having you back on. You're always welcome whenever you have the time. And it's so awesome to see how far you've come from, like you said, wanting to go visit to being flown out. It just shows the people in the chat, keep on, doing what you love at home first. I mean, if you have a job or whatever, and you've got your home grow, just commit as much time and passion as you can to it and do the best you can there. And that will translate to greater things. If you want to go into working in the, cannabis industry, that experience is very real and it translates. And you just got to, find your position, what you like and what you don't like doing. And I think that Miss Nudie is just one of many examples that has shown that, it's possible to come from the home growing level to, being a commercial cultivator and being able to get flown out to, events that you want to visit. And that's just something very awesome. So with that said, I want to give it over to last and certainly not least, the American one.
Jack, again, thanks for hosting. It was awesome tonight. I love what everybody brings to the table, and it was great seeing Miss Nudie Grows and learning about her adventures in the cannabis industry. And Matthew always brings great science to the table and seeks out stuff that I would never know about or hear about, which is always awesome. And everyone in chat is awesome. I wish I was in there a little bit more. But yeah, thanks everyone, and peace out.
Thank you so much, the American one. Always a pleasure having you. I've been enjoying the Amy Aces quite a lot recently. And Miss Nudie was talking about smell proof or scent proof things in the mail over in Canada. And I was like, we have that in the US, just not quite legally yet. And I won't get too much deeper into detail about that. But thank you, as always, to the American one for joining us and for bringing
I'm glad you're enjoying
awesome
it.
stuff.
And yeah, I should mention, if anybody's interested in Amy Aces or anything else they see that I made on my Instagram, just hit me up and I'll take care of you.
He's very generous with his seeds. Everybody that I've known who's gotten seeds from Tao has been very happy and has gotten very gracious loads of seeds. So Tao, you're a great dude. We really appreciate having you. And I guess I'm technically last, your host, Jack Greenstock, like you see behind me here on my little logo on Instagram. And I'm also Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. You can email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And my book, 50 Strains of Green, is available at 50strains.com if you want a copy of that. So thank you to everybody who listened. I had such a great time. I totally didn't get to see the chat at all. I'm going to have to watch it back because I was just enjoying the conversation and the papers. We went through a few different ones that I really wasn't even expecting some of the science that we covered today to get covered, but we got through it. And I think it was a great conversation. So thank you to everybody who listened in. This is Jack Greenstock signing out. Peace and love, y'all.
Grow love, everyone.